Momoshiki has secretly evolved within the body of Boruto, which may be why he has completely disappeared from the story. After going through almost every emergence of this character in the manga, I came across something fascinating from chapter 72, which could act as the key to unraveling the mystery of his absence. What if I told you Momoshiki himself foretold his fate to us, and almost nobody has noticed this massive detail? It was in plain sight for 3 years, yet no one is using it as the basis to understand what happened to him. On top of that, I also found some scientific procedures which might explain what's going on with Momoshiki within the psyche of Boruto. It's a pure malfunction in Otsutsuki technology, and since their civilization is far more advanced and superior than humans, we will need to examine all the real-world tech that may have inspired the karma and then identify their vulnerabilities to figure out the current state of Momoshiki. Well, luckily I have done that to make this the best video you will see on this character, so let's unravel this Otsutsuki mystery, starting with the super secret prophecy. Millions of years, the Otsutsuki clan acted as cosmic predators, going from planet after planet to harvest chakra fruits while using the karma to resurrect themselves. You must be familiar with how the karma allows an Otsutsuki to back up their consciousness, genetic data, and powers by implanting a seal on a compatible host, usually a living being known as the vessel. After the Otsutsuki's physical body dies, the karma activates a process to override the vessel's body and mind, effectively resurrecting the Otsutsuki by transforming the host into a new version of themselves. So far, only humans with strong chakra, physical resilience, or unique genetic traits are shown to be the prime candidates for this seal. The individuals need to survive the initial implantation and the gradual overwriting process, which also taxes their body. This is why weak individuals like some of Amado's test subjects died during the karma experiment. In case of Boruto, he was entirely compatible with the karma of Momoshiki, meaning the Otsutsuki had literally won a lottery due to the genetic potential of his vessel. In the manga, Momoshiki attributed his Byakugan blood as the catalyst of compatibility, while in the anime, which is likely a refined version of the original, it was Boruto's Otsutsuki power which got attributed as the key factor. While the story showed us Momoshiki taking L's after L's, as all his plans went flop one after another, there is something intriguing about his first prophecy that no one seems to have taken notice of. When Momoshiki predicted Boruto losing everything through the blue eyes of Ida, he still tried to hijack his consciousness multiple times. This means he was fully aware that the future that he foresaw had a very low likelihood of coming true. Still, he tried to change the odds in his favor, yet he failed terribly. His biggest letdown was the moment when he got fused with Boruto after the karma failure, a phenomenon which had never taken place with any Otsutsuki before. He was the first of his kind to fuse with a vessel like this, and that's when he made the biggest fumble. In chapter 7, a surge of confidence ran through his veins when he revealed some negative things about Boruto's future. He taunts the vessel by declaring that his destiny is filled with despair and that he cannot control it no matter how much he tries. Momoshiki emphasizes that a devastating event is rapidly approaching, something that will break Boruto's spirit to the point of wanting to die, with the Otsutsuki planning to seize the control of his body and live as him afterwards. Surprisingly, he even mentioned what would happen to the vessel's consciousness after his fateful takeover. So according to Momoshiki, Boruto was supposed to dwell forever in a corner of his psyche after the Otsutsuki would have gained the master control of his body. There was no point in seeking resurrection, since controlling the vessel's body would have led to the same result. So in metaphysical terms, Boruto's core consciousness or soul was about to be reduced to a passive powerless state within his own mind that would have made him incapable of influencing the external world. But ironically, Momoshiki's own words have now come back to haunt him. He's going through the exact same condition that he mentioned during this emergence, which only means one thing. It was a subtle foreshadowing of what his future is going to be like, and a massive hint to back this up comes from chapter 10. The things are about to get really interesting from this point, so I hope you pay some attention. When Momoshiki first appeared to implant his karma on Boruto, he revealed that he couldn't see his own future, yet could see his with perfect clarity. After this, he reveals the blue eyes taking everything away from him. However, the event that he's talking about takes place after both of them become one, so technically he predicted his own fate while reading the future of Boruto. This gets further confirmed in chapter 72, where he states that Boruto will despair so much that he will wish for his own death. The point about dwelling in a corner of his psyche forever perfectly describes the current state of the Otsutsuki, which only means one thing. This entire time he was not foreseeing the fate of Boruto, rather he was actually looking into his own future, as both the entities were destined to become one. I hope you click that subscribe button, cause I'm about to prove this point further. So what according to you could be the reason behind Momoshiki saying that he couldn't see his own future? While it makes sense for him to tell Boruto that his future is visible to him and the type of events which are waiting for him, but what value does this line add to the statement where he mentions his incompetence of not being able to see his own fate? Well, you would be surprised to know that this line got removed in the anime. Instead, Momoshiki says to Boruto that I can see your destiny pretty clearly. You cannot tell me that the writers decided to replace this line without any reason, and this is where it gets more interesting. Momoshiki this entire time was seeing his own future. Boruto was merely serving as a vessel through which he would experience it. The reason he did not realize it early on is because he didn't take into account the possibility of him fusing with Boruto, a moment that completely changed the course of events for him. The future side of Momoshiki seems more linear, unlike the prescience of Kashin Koji, which can take many possibilities into consideration. And since this means that he was only looking at one foreseeable path, without any additional possibilities, he must have forgot to take notice of the fact that him bringing Boruto back from death would fuse their destinies in incomprehensible ways. This explains why he mistook his own fate as Boruto's, and this also means that right now he's silently enduring so much pain that he himself wishes for death, the very same fate that he once prophesied for his vessel. One of the biggest reasons for this theory to come true is the fact that Boruto did not actually lose everything. He still had Sasuke with him, as well as Kashin Koji and a few supporters from Konoha. The one who actually lost everything was none other than Momoshiki himself. As for the final nail to this theory, remember the glimpse of future in which Boruto was shown the day of omnipotence. The last panel featured Kawaki with the horn on his head, meaning that he was using Karma Stage 2, and unlike what the majority of people believe, this scene did not take place when Boruto got his eye destroyed while protecting Sarada. Rather, it was an avoided future that Momoshiki's Byakugan had foreseen, and if you look closely, Kawaki seems to have killed Boruto in this sequence, which is why he's looking down with a bloodstain on his face. But what if I told you it was the POV of Momoshiki who's witnessing his own death from Boruto's body? In fact, the only reason Kawaki wants Boruto dead is solely because of Momoshiki, since his emergence can cause a lot of destruction. Now this is where it gets more engaging. When Boruto was trapped by Inoshikacho in chapter 80, Momoshiki asked him to switch up as he could eliminate all of them in no time. But he refused, and that's when Sarada sent Sasuke to his rescue, changing his fate forever. I believe Momoshiki was trying to change the future here, cause Boruto deciding not to give up on his consciousness meant that he would get killed by Kawaki as seen in the glimpse of future. So if by chance Sasuke had not appeared to save Boruto, Kawaki would have appeared to eliminate both him and Momoshiki, marking the fulfillment of what was shown in chapter 75. I believe Momoshiki somehow knew that this future wasn't going to happen. That's why he asked Boruto to surrender his consciousness. He would have expected him to give up on his body, as it was a point of future that he couldn't see with his ability. But since Sasuke appeared to save him, only half of what Momoshiki expected came true. The Kawaki future that Boruto saw, whose purpose was to instill fear in him, was successfully avoided. But the dream of hijacking the body of his vessel never came true, which made Momoshiki the target of his own prophecy. So while this theory properly explains why the Otsutsuki hasn't spoken a word for 3 whole years, is it actually the end of him? Well, what Momoshiki is going through right now is a time of uncertainty and silent suffering, and the only weapon that he has on hand is patience. A very similar situation was faced by Ishiki when he got betrayed by Kaguya, but he kept waiting patiently inside the body of the monk Jigen as a parasite for centuries. This proves that whenever Otsutsukis face unprecedented times, they start to adapt themselves with the circumstances to find a resolve. So the case of Momoshiki must be no different, and now the question remains, how exactly would he get out of it? Well, to understand this better, let's take the example of a soul thorn bulb. You must be familiar with how it's an object which contains the entire essence of a living god tree, and can be used to either revive the associated Shinju or his human counterpart. Suppose Boruto with this Momoshiki condition was a living god tree who gets turned into a soul thorn bulb. Who do you think would have revived once it was put inside that black box? Would it be Boruto or Momoshiki? Well, the simple answer would be the black box would revive Boruto without without curing his Otsutsuki ailment. And if somehow there was a Shinju tree of the Otsutsuki, the Soul Thorn would have then revived Momoshiki instead by completely erasing the trace of the vessel, mainly because over 80% of the DNA inside Boruto belongs to Momoshiki, and if the Otsutsuki was somehow trapped inside a tree, the Soul Thorn would have definitely revitalized him. But since they are now a hybrid entity, let's say a fusion of Uzumaki Boruto and Otsutsuki Momoshiki, which gives us Otsutsuki Boruto, it's pretty hard to separate them both after this fusion, which means Momoshiki will need to resort to something unexpected to make a comeback. The Karma Seal is strikingly similar to the CRISPR gene editing technology, as both function as precise tools for rewriting genetic or biological blueprints to achieve a specific outcome. Karma, a chakra-based mechanism, embeds the Otsutsuki's DNA and consciousness into the vessel's cells, progressively altering his genome to transform him into a replica of the Otsutsuki, much like how CRISPR uses Cas9 and guide RNA to target and modify specific DNA sequences for therapeutic or trait-altering purposes. The CRISPR technology allows researchers to insert, delete or replace genes, enabling the correction of mutations or the introduction of new traits. Recently, it was used to edit a grey wolf's genome, incorporating genes from the extinct direwolf, such as the ones affecting bone structure and muscle mass, which created a hybrid that now carries direwolf characteristics while preserving the essential biology of the grey wolf. But the Karma takes it 10 steps further, since it entirely changes the vessel's biology during the revival process. However, the CRISPR technology gave me an idea which could act as a cure to Boruto's major problem. If Momoshiki by chance is still planning something within the vessel's body, then Amado could hypothetically use a gene editing technology to remove him from the DNA of Boruto. Well, it only sounds good on paper, since Momoshiki has now reduced to a soul-like entity within the body of his vessel. It might have hypothetically worked before, when the Karma was acting normally to help Momoshiki revive, even though it would have been really hard to pull off. But as we know from Ishiki's story, the Otsutsukis never give up easily when it comes to survival as well as revival, which leaves us with only one thing that Momoshiki could be doing right now to increase his chances of coming back. What makes Momoshiki's case really different than Ishiki is that he had the power of future sight, the same power that mistakenly made him see his own fate as Boruto's due to the unexpected hybridization of chapter 67. While there was a point when Ishiki said Kashin Koji was a star of change who bears the mighty fate of Jiraiya, but this statement cannot be taken as an evidence of him looking into the future. It suits better with the idea of him having the knowledge of the past, either through some clairvoyance based power, which is very unlikely, or maybe because he has lived through the history enough. So to make things easier, let's assume Momoshiki is the only one with the future side fighting this unique scenario. Back in chapter 75, he said he has the knowledge of all the Shinjutsu, but I believe he was missing something. What if he got to know about the perfect description of prescience from Kashin Koji in the time skip, and from that day onwards, he began to evolve his future sight into the 10 directions, just to figure out the perfect time when he could take over Boruto to make him actually lose everything. Similar to how back in chapter 76, he deliberately let his thoughts slip to enrage Kawaki. Then 2 chapters later, he helped him escape from Konoha, delivering the final blow to trigger omnipotence. He knew what he was doing, but the planning backfired when Boruto decided to stay vigilant. The whole chase of chapter 79 was like a surrender or death situation. If he had not accepted to Momoshiki's terms, Kawaki would have killed him, and if he did let the control of his body away, then he would have witnessed a large number of deaths, which would have made him lose interest in gaining control again, explaining why Momoshiki was so confident in becoming Boruto. But Sasuke's interference changed everything, and the only reason behind it was that Momoshiki's future sight only allowed him to see a single linear path of future. All the other possibilities that he couldn't see were not visible to him, since he wasn't using the ultimate power of future sight, which is the prescience. So in order to not repeat the same mistake, the best thing he could be doing right now is training. He must be training really hard within the psyche of Boruto to unlock the power of seeing multiple futures, and based on his knowledge of so many Shinjutsu, he must be able to pull it off with the passage of time. In chapter 16 of Two Blue Vortex, Boruto said to Kawaki that it was during the code fight when he felt something similar to Momoshiki's possession. This indicates he did make an appearance appearance when Sasuke was fighting Code, maybe in order to save Boruto from the Grimes, since he's an Otsutsuki, cause one bite of these creatures meant the end of the world. Well, even though that makes perfect sense, then why didn't he get rid of Sasuke's tree permanently if he actually emerged to save Boruto? Even the dialogue of Code doesn't suggest anything related to Momoshiki's emergence. Well, what if I told you this sensation that Boruto revealed in chapter 16 was not Momoshiki, but the first ever manga activation of the Jogan? I will soon bring a full video on this topic, so make sure to subscribe to not miss that. Also check out these videos for more amazing stuff. I will see you next time.